And I will say, the combat is probably the weakest point of the game. Like, I think there's
Yeah,
no
I
denying
agree.
the combat is jank. Like, I will say, spoiler free, of course, there's certain enemies you'll hit, and I even posted this in like my 10 tips for Silent Hill, where there's like an invisible wall where like the literally like the enemy, I can't hit the enemy. That would happen to me a lot. Yeah, if you're hearing boss music or you're hearing sounds everywhere, just don't listen to it, because
Yeah,
obviously
you
that,
can't always trust it. Yeah.
yeah, that's where the psychological part like kind of messes with you, because you'll be walking in a hallway and you'll hear all this sound. You'll be like, okay, someone's gonna jump at me, but then nothing jumps at you. So this is going to be my spoiler-free slash spoiler review of Silent Hill 2 Remake, and I'm going to be talking about the best and worst parts of this game and answering the question, is it worth buying? I should mention, since I'm a new Silent Hill fan, I thought it would be best to invite one of my YouTube friends, Byrus the Virus, since I needed someone that knew the lore. So let's get started with the spoiler-free section. You know, if you haven't played Silent Hill 2 Remake, it's definitely worth. If you're a survival horror fan, you know what? I also have to state too that I played Silent Hill like 2 for the very first time just like a week and a half before the remake released. We did it on stream. I actually played it on the hardest difficulty, which I hear is not recommended. That was wild. That was wild. Honestly, the game was kind of weird. I will say, like the OG I'm referring to. The OG had like a system where they gave you a bunch of ammo and the enemies took a bunch of health, and sometimes the enemies would like take too much like hits. Like there was one nurse that I freaking was hitting 25 times for her to freaking die. It was crazy. So that was a little. Sometimes the game was hard and sometimes it was easy, but it was a fun experience. We did it on stream. That was a pretty hype stream. But yeah, so that was my first experience with Silent Hill 2, just a week before the remake released. And I got to say, the remake was fantastic. I mean, the first thing that I have to say is that it's definitely a reimagining. But what are your thoughts on it, Byrus?
I loved it. I'm a Silent Hill fan myself, although I will
Yeah.
admit the original games I never played much, mostly because growing up I was not allowed to. But I watched tons of videos, playthroughs, like deep dives. I used to watch all of that kind of stuff. So going into this game, I had a very fair idea of the original when I used to watch my cousin play back in the day. It's honestly spectacular. I remember there was a lot of discourse online about it not looking great, and I was like, let them cook, man, let them cook, give it some time. I know you were one of those people that you were kind of debating about how it looked, and I'm like, no, man, trust, like it'll look
Well,
great.
it,
And
it wasn't
final
it wasn't
product
about
is
how
gonna
it
be awesome.
looked. It was more like I just did not like the combat. Like the combat looked like trash. And I will say, the combat is probably the weakest point of the game. Like I think there's
Yeah,
no
I
denying
agree.
the combat is jank. Like I will say, spoiler free, of course, there's certain enemies you'll hit, and I even posted this in like my 10 tips for Silent Hill, where there's like an invisible wall where like the literally like the enemy, I can't hit the enemy. That would happen to me a lot. Well, like every now and then. I wasn't really too much like critiquing the look of the game, but just the look of the combat. The combat didn't look good. It was better with the final product, but it's still the weakest point of the game in my opinion. And that's another thing too that I forgot to mention too, is that my history with Silent Hill, for those of you that don't know, I actually grew up playing, that was actually my first survival horror game. I was 5 years old. My mom rented Silent Hill. We played that, and she was playing it like till late. Like I think we were like 10 p.m. It was already dark, and I'm like, Mom, I gotta go to school. I can't continue this. She was like, no, we gotta find the girl, right? We gotta find her. We're in the school. And I'm like, no, like, no, I don't want to, Mom. So I never beat it. Obviously, I rented it. I played it. That was my first survival horror experience, but I was never a big Silent Hill fan. But playing the OG and of Silent Hill 2 and the remake, I have to say I am a fan. I am now a fan of Silent Hill. I also played the short message, but that's my only experience with the series. But yeah, I'll pass it off to you, Byrus. Yeah, what else did you do you recommend for people that haven't played Silent Hill?
If you are a survival horror fan, listen, that's one of my favorite genres like ever, and this game tackles it all amazingly. Like from the survival horror aspect, the psychological aspect of it, the characters are really well done. The combat, well, yes, is a little jank. You do get used to it after a while, but I think
Yeah.
it makes sense for the story and the character that you play as James. He's not a combat aficionado like we get Leon and Ari for. You know, he's not John Wick. Simple as that.
Yeah.
So he's just
Yeah.
an everyday man who just doesn't really know how to shoot a gun, use a weapon, or really know how to attack people, which is fair because if you're put in a situation like this, you know, I get it. So I understand that it was probably more of a design choice than like anything else. But it's great, and the game goes really long too. If you explore everything, you can spend easy 14 to 16 hours on your first playthrough, which is good. It leaves a lot to
Yeah.
be desired, and along with the multiple endings, they even added 2 additional ones for I think what a total of 8 because the original had 6. there's a lot of replay value in it. So it's really good. You can dissect these characters pretty well. The motion capture is amazing. The story's still phenomenal. We'll get into some of the other stuff later that I'm not going to spoil as of yet. But overall, if you are a survival horror fan, I highly recommend playing this game. It's honestly a banger.
Yeah, that's a good point. You mentioned how he's not Leon. And I think that's a funny thing because as I was playing OG Silent Hill 2, I was like, bro, this feels like a Team U Leon. Even though like at that point we only had like Resident Evil 2 Leon, because obviously I think Silent Hill came out in 2001, right? So
Yeah.
it was just a couple of years, but it did feel like just like a lamer Leon. In my opinion, there was that direct comparison. I will say the remake did a fantastic job of making James feel like his own character. I didn't really see any similarities to Leon in the remake. While in the OG Silent Hill, I don't know, I kept seeing like this just felt like Team U Leon. I don't know why. Maybe it's my first experience. Maybe that's all I had to kind of bounce off. But the remake, I think his character stands on his own. Obviously, for those of you that don't know, Silent Hill was inspired heavily by Resident Evil. So obviously you would have that kind of frame, you know, that idea is valid, that obviously Konami wanted to have like their own kind of Leon character. We did react to that a couple of years ago where the Silent Hill creator and the Resident Evil creator both sat down, and the Silent Hill creator did state that that Konami basically told the team, we want to have a Resident Evil, make something that's similar to Resident Evil. So they did rip off a lot of like the menus and stuff, as the director stated in that interview. But yeah, so you can definitely see the inspiration in the OG, but in the new one, I thought, yeah, they did a fantastic job of keeping those two separate. I thought that the character model, which I think they took off of the actor Luke Roberts, this is what I'm assuming because they kind of look similar, obviously not 100%, but I thought James's new look is way better than the OG. His haircut looks a lot better. I mean, his haircut looked kind of goofy in the OG, though I will say, once like in certain animations, if like you're seeing the back of his head, he does look like the OG, like the same hairstyle, but you know, from the front it's a little bit different. It's more stylized and stuff. I will say too, the acting is a lot better. I mean, this is kind of like the comparison from like OG RE1 to like the remake RE1. It's that kind of night and day. You know, obviously the remake of Resident Evil 1 doesn't have the best acting. This is still what
it's
it also
still
came out
goofy.
in like 2000. When did the first dude, I'm forgetting now. I'm getting my dates mixed. 2002?
2002, you were right.
Yeah, 2000. Yeah, thank you, Lord. Thank you. What's up, Demon? How's it going? Axel, how's it going, guys? Yeah, so thank you guys for helping me with that. Yeah, so 2002, I was kind of second guessing myself there. But yeah, as I was saying, it's better. Like the acting is way better. And I have to say too, the actors did a fantastic job of like talking a bit like down, like as if everybody was depressed. Everyone was groggy. You know, I guess being in Silent Hill kind of gives you that kind of vibe, right? So everybody kind of talked a little slower, a little more, you know, slow paced. I don't know. I thought the acting was way better in the remake. I thought they did a fantastic job. I think we'll talk about this in the nitpick section, but there was one part where I was like, oh, bro, what is that? We'll talk about that later on. But when we go into like the spoiler section, but no, definitely.
They talk more like people in this game than just robots. Like
stuff
from that time. Typically did.
That's a great analogy. Yeah, the OG was really bad. Yeah, it was like OG RE1. The other thing too that I have to mention, and as mentioned, I'm very new to the Silent Hill series. Like this, I've only beaten Silent Hill, OG Silent Hill 2 and the remake, and also the short message. Since that was basically my first experience beating the game, I found it very interesting that in both of those games, it almost felt like going into Silent Hill. Well, I don't want to get too much into spoilers, so maybe we'll go over that a little later. But one thing that I'll say is that Silent Hill is a very interesting place. Obviously, my understanding of Silent Hill, and please correct me if I'm wrong, to my knowledge, it almost seems as if Silent Hill is very kind of open-ended. So you can everyone can have their own interpretation. But my interpretation of it is that it's kind of a purgatory. And it's kind of a purgatory, a place where people kind of reflect and find out about themselves. It's not heaven, it's not hell. It doesn't give me that vibe. It's more like just like a place in between, or it's like a place before people get to those locations, right? Of course, this is something that I don't really go over too much on the channel because Resident Evil doesn't really go into the paranormal side of things, and so Silent Hill is super paranormal. So obviously, bringing those kind of topics of heaven and hell, it brings out those kinds of topics, definitely. But yeah, it's a very interesting survival horror that I definitely recommend. So guys, if you're a Resident Evil fan and you haven't experienced Silent Hill, you gotta play Silent Hill 2 specifically, because like I said, I haven't played the others, only the first one, the second one, and the short message. The game kind of gave me a lot of vibes of other survival horror games, and I don't know if you felt this, Byrus. I kind of got Last of Us vibes, I got Alone in the Dark vibes, I got Alan Wake, obviously, because Alan Wake seems to be inspired by Silent Hill. But what I mean is that and also Dead Space, but it just a lot of the mechanics, and also like just the feeling, or different, mostly the mechanics of those games. Like for example, Last of Us, you know, when you see Joel kind of picking up stuff, there's like a big circle button. I kind of felt that with this game. It kind of felt very similar to the way those characters would grab stuff. Some of the puzzles were very similar to Alone in the Dark, which of course Alone in the Dark did inspire Resident Evil. Resident Evil inspired Silent Hill. But it's interesting how all of those games kind of inspired Silent Hill, like the newer games. So I don't know if you felt that too, Byrus. Did you kind of have that same connection or no?
So to piggyback off that thought, I feel like it's kind of hard to reinvent the wheel, especially when it comes to survival horror, because there's only so many elements that can be portrayed in those sorts of games. Yeah. Again, like the Last of Us thing now, I think it's very modernized for them to have like a little indicator above an item, so you know you can actually pick it up instead of it like blending into the screen or flashing white. Mind you, I guess they still kind of do that. But yeah, it's kind of hard to reinvent the wheel, especially nowadays when these games have been around for 20, almost 30 odd years, where they take the elements from, you know, these traditional games and either remaking them or making spin-offs. Like again, like recently I played like Hollow Body. It's like more or less just like a 1-for-1 Silent Hill type game. And they take a lot of those elements that you kind of don't really need to change. Again, if it's not broke, don't fix it. So I see what you're getting at. Personally, I just was just entranced in the game as a whole that I didn't even really think about that. But now that you pointed it out, I do see that perspective. Yeah, like there's definitely some instances where they pick and take things from these other games that have worked successfully, and then they merge it into this one to kind of make it a more modern experience. Yeah. That's just what I got off of it. Yeah. But yeah, like there's not too much to say there. At least from my point of view, right? Yeah,
it's definitely not a negative for me. If anything, I thought it was kind of it was a good thing, you know, because it obviously seems like Bloober Team was really that is the company name, right? Bloober Team.
Bloober Team, yeah.
Yeah, Bloober or Bloober. Is it Bloober?
Bloober, Bloober.
Okay, yeah, Bloober. Yeah, thank you. Yeah, because I wasn't sure. Yeah, Bloober. I thought they did a fantastic job of just kind of seeing what works and kind of incorporating that into kind of like a Frankenstein of a game. Well, it's not really Frankenstein. It's more like just an inspiration. It's not a direct copy, in my opinion. Like, for example, like the combat was kind of similar to Callisto Protocol, which, you know, that's where I kind of got the Dead Space. Obviously, the OG did have a stomp mechanic, but, you know, it was a lot more jank in that one. While this one, it just felt nice. You know, like the same stomp feeling that you played in Dead Space, I really liked in Silent Hill 2 Remake. In fact, if you guys caught that stream, the first time I was playing Silent Hill, I was kind of over stomping. I ain't gonna lie. I was kind of over stomping just because
it's fun.
Yeah. It was really good. Yeah. Thank you, Lord, for Bloober. Yeah. Yeah. And the other thing, too, that I also wanted to talk about was the atmosphere. Dang, the atmosphere was one of the best parts of the game. Yeah. The sound design and combined with the atmosphere, I thought was crazy. It was crazy good. Like, for example, sometimes, without spoiling, sometimes you'd be walking in a location and you'll hear like boss music, or you'll hear like someone almost like walking, like you'll hear steps or something, or you'll hear like the radio and you'll hear like muffled like noises. Or if you're going by a bathroom, you'll hear like, you know, you'll just hear it's like the game is always messing with you almost. So you kind of have to, if you're playing the game for the very first time, don't trust the audio. Just don't. Like,
that's where that psychological aspect comes into play, right?
Yeah.
Like you can cut the tension at some points in the game with a knife. It's so thick.
Yeah. Yeah. Or it's almost like, I actually mentioned that in my tips video, but it's like, if you're hearing boss music or you're hearing sounds everywhere, just don't listen to it, because obviously
you can't always trust it.
That's where the psychological part like kind of messes with you, because you'll be walking in a hallway and you'll hear all this sound. You'll be like, okay, someone's going to jump at me, but then nothing jumps at you. Nothing happens, and it's like, that's crazy. So that's one of the best parts of the game. And then I also have to mention too, the nurses. That's the other thing gotta talk about. The nurses are kind of a pain, but They're also one of the things that I like. But anyways, now we'll move on to the spoiler section. I guess we'll start with nitpicks. Byrus, what are your nitpicks with the game? I will say, there doesn't seem like there's a lot of nitpicks because it's such a good game. But if you were to say if you had any nitpicks, what would they be?
Yeah, like you said, I don't have a whole lot to complain about with the game. I think it runs smooth, looks beautiful.
Yeah.
Again, the atmosphere is incredible. The story, the characters, like everything is great. The only real nitpick, I guess, would kind of be the some of the enemies, especially when it comes to the combat. Like, I had this one instance with nurses where they do have certain combat patterns you can counter and parry and dodge, but a lot of the times they seemed unpredictable. I don't know if that's just like a skill issue on my end or what that was, but there were times where they would repeat patterns. Like, they have this one instance, especially in the hospital section, where you encounter a lot of them where they will go for 3 swings, you can dodge, and then they give you an opening to attack. But I've had instances where they've just completely bypassed that and it just went into another sequence. Like, stuff like that, that's like little janky. It gets kind of annoying when you're trying to learn their patterns and it doesn't really work. That kind of pisses me off. Another issue with the nurses is they're they're supposed to be deaf, or not deaf, sorry, they're blind. But I would do, like, I remember the first playthrough, the first one I stood still. I'm like, hey, if I don't move, they can't hear and they'll just keep walking around. And they just didn't care. They found their pathing. So that to me kind of...
Did you have your flashlight on?
No, I would turn it off and they still did it anyway.
Okay, yeah. So that's something I noticed as well, kind of talking in that same part, is that I did notice that sometimes the sneaking mechanic was kind of off. Like, it wasn't 100%.
Yeah.
It's not as bad as Resident Evil, but it's not like it's not like Metal Gear Solid or like a sneaking game. You know what I mean? Like, it's not like the stealth isn't 100%.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
So I wasn't expecting it to be that, but I was like, for the one enemy that's supposed to be blind, I would have expected to at least have some of that semblance in there, especially obviously the original is a little different because there were so many limitations back then.
Yeah.
But now reimagining it, I feel like they could have implemented that a little better, and at least in my experience with the game, it didn't, which to me was a little disappointing, but it wasn't enough to like taint it. It was just, okay, well, I can't really sneak around them, so I'm just gonna either attack them or run away because there's not much else I can do there. That was like, yeah, that was fine to me. Nitpick is that the game could have been cut a little shorter, but I think that's just because I like to explore every single crevice even when there's nothing there, because I'm a little loot goblin. I need loot in my games, so in case I get absolutely demolished, like Flesh Lips, for example, I have that, so... Again, that's like such a small nitpick that's only on me, but it's good. Like, I'm not really complaining about that. That's just like a small, minute thing that on repeat playthroughs does kind of suck, especially when you're trying to do the speed runs in under 10 hours for one of the trophies I know that's there, or just trying to get the multiple endings.
Yeah, like one part...
You can cheese a lot of spots anyway. Like, it's not really a big of an issue.
One part kind of talking about that, of it just being like, bro, can I not skip this, is the elevator in the hospital.
Yes,
like with like the questions.
You can't skip that gets annoying.
Yeah, and it's like, bro, like they should have added like a little skip button, because that's like, you just have to wait there, you know what I mean? Like, it's a little,
it's like a 2.5 minute, 3-minute thing, right? That, like on repeat, I know it's to do with like an alternate ending, which I get, so you want to pay attention, but on repeat playthroughs, when you're trying to go for all the endings, it does get a little monotonous to have to sit there and say, okay, let me just go to the bathroom real quick while I'm waiting. You know what I mean? So I agree with you there. That could have been done a little different, but again, most of the stuff from the remake was fairly unchanged, except maybe some encounters. So I'm not really gonna complain too much. It just sucks when you're playing through it again. You're like, oh, I have to sit through this a 3rd time, 4th time, 5th time. That's just me being annoying.
No. I mean, like I said, that's a nitpick. That's a fair nitpick. I will say too, the first nitpick too that you mentioned with the nurses and sometimes them kind of getting a hit on you. I will say that that is sometimes with the dodge. The dodge, you have to be perfect, especially when it comes with the nurses. That was actually another one of the tips that I mentioned in my video is that I had no idea until just playing the game, and kind of I was like, bro, okay, I got to practice their movements. You know, and that's when I started getting better dealing with just like killing them just with melee, and that was a lot better for me after I just practiced. I mean, practice with the nurses in the hospital, but yeah, so I practiced with them, and then it got a lot easier. But it is true that sometimes the combat can be jank. As mentioned, sometimes I would shoot them in the knee. I would go in for just, go in to just smack them, and something would stop me. Like, the game would stop me. Or another thing too is that sometimes you'd be fighting, and then there's like a desk there, and then you would just like like knock the desk. You know what I mean? Like you would hit the desk and kind of get stuck and get prevented again. Or sometimes it almost seems like it's the same kind of stopping animation. So I wonder if maybe the game would just assume that there was something blocking you in that specific location, even though there was no desk. Like it almost felt like sometimes there was something that was preventing you from kind of doing a finishing blow. So that, and then I gotta talk about the new game plus. Yo, what the frick was that? Yo, why does the game give you a chainsaw for just beating the game once? I thought that, I'm sorry, but I think this goes a little bit beyond a nitpick for me, but I was kind of pissed off at that because the chainsaw is so OP. And for me personally, I think it would have been better if the game had given you the OP weapon after you had beat the game on hard, or if you got like maybe 7 of the 8 endings or 8 of the, you got all of the endings. That's definitely some kind of, like, it's definitely a weapon that I would reserve for an end game kind of reward. After beating the game, you get the OP weapon, right? Like exactly how Resident Evil does it, right? Like even with RE4 remake, which released in 2023, you had to beat the game on like the hardest difficulty, right? Or like professional or hardcore on S+. I think it was professional and get like an A rank at least, right? I mean, if I'm not mistaken, I think you had to do that to unlock the sweeper, the Chicago sweeper.
Yeah.
Which was, it's not the best weapon, but it's a gun that makes, runs really easy because you can get infinite ammo with it. So that was something that I really liked about RE. Obviously, even RE2, even RE3 remake, the end game rewards are good, right? Like it's something that you can get. RE3 was a bit different where they kind of made you like pay and stuff, but it was still good. But even if we look at RE2, like didn't you need to beat the game on hardcore, get an S or something S plus to get like the infinite LE5 or the infinite like ATM, I believe, like the rocket launcher or whatever? Like those are things that I think make the game a lot better because it just adds to the replayability. It's almost like it kind of just makes you want to beat the game again and again and again to get a better time, get better at the game, learn the mechanics, learn the enemy placements, and kind of know the routes of where to go faster. I didn't really get that with Silent Hill 2, honestly. When they just gave me the OP chainsaw just for beating the game once, it kind of felt like I just, like all skill just went out the window. You know what I mean? So for example, if you beat the game on easy and then you do a new game plus and you want to do it on hard, with the chainsaw, you're not really doing it on hard. You know what I mean? So I was also not a fan of the game kind of not rewarding you for beating the game on hardcore. And the OG was kind of like this as well. Like to my knowledge, I mean, I only got like I got the best ending for the OG Silent Hill 2, but honestly, it felt like I didn't get anything for beating it. I also wasn't a big fan of kind of picking the puzzle level and then picking the difficulty level. You know what I mean? Like that almost makes like it's almost like a custom difficulty. Like I think the option is fine, but kind of like if you look at games like Baldur's Gate 3, they have a custom feature where you can actually just pick what difficulty you want to do. It kind of felt like that, but I also think they should just have like normal, easy, normal, hard, whatever harder difficulties, so that then you get trophies for that. You get a reward, or you get like the OP chainsaw after beating the game on hardcore, on hard, something like that, right? Because I don't know, for me, I didn't appreciate that the game gave me such an OP weapon just for beating it once. I don't know, did you feel that as well? Did it dilute the game for you, or was it just, maybe it's just me?
To me, it didn't, because it was like that in the original as well. As soon as you start New Game Plus, that's there immediately. And I think it's just to give you kind of a break and feel...
Oh, the OG was like that too?
It was like that too, yeah.
Oh, okay, I didn't even know.
After you beat the game once.
I see. Okay, so they're just redoing that.
New game, it gives you the chainsaw regardless. If you were to just start like a new game as is, then you obviously wouldn't get it. It's just like a New Game Plus type thing that you could also use to get the alternate endings to make things a little easier if you wanted.
Yeah.
So again, it's like it's there. You don't have to use it. There are some downsides to the chainsaw because it is a little slow.
But it's like
an animation where he stands around like Juliet from Lollipop Chainsaw. Is his hand on his hip and like, have you seen that?
Oh no, I have. I've only seen the Texas Chainsaw, like the Leatherface one, where he goes like,
he does that too.
But the thing I was going to mention was I didn't know that this was an OG problem. So I guess, again, I would have to put this in the nitpick section just because this doesn't seem like it's a new problem. This is definitely an old problem. Thank you for letting me know, Byrus. And that's why I have Byrus here, by the way, is because I just became a Silent Hill fan, so I don't know all of like the lore or all of the other games and stuff. And I guess that's something else too that I kind of enjoyed too, is that there was kind of mentions of other games in that, like for example the hotel room. But I guess we'll go over that a little later. But I kind of mentioned at the start in the spoiler free section that there was a section where the acting was a bit weird, and that was when, this is the only time by the way where I was like, this is kind of cringe, I don't know what's happening here. But it's in the hospital. So after James goes into Otherworld, and then he's kind of in the basement and he reunites with Maria. I don't know if you remember that scene where he's like,
the pyramid change.
yeah, exactly, yeah, right before you find the rings and stuff. He's like, oh, Mary, and then he's like, oh, it's just you, Maria. Anyways, and she's like, anyways, and that scene was, I don't know what it was.
James.
Mary. Oh, Maria, I thought. Sorry. Anyway, I'm glad you're alive.
Anyway? What do you mean, anyway? I was almost killed back there. I have never been so scared in my whole life. All you care about is that dead wife of yours.
I think it was more of like the timing. It almost felt like Maria was kind of slowed down, like almost as if the actors weren't in the same room together. And whoever edited that scene was a bit weird. Like it was a bit strange. It made the scene weird. But yeah, I don't know. That scene did not do it for me. And again, that's just a nitpick. That's not something that I'm like, oh, the game sucks because of that. But yeah, it was just that section. The other thing too that I have to mention as well is the puzzles. I will say Silent Hill. Now I've only played Silent Hill on the hardest difficulty, on the hardest puzzle section, the hardest puzzle difficulty. So I don't know if this is just because I'm playing it on the hardest difficulty, but the puzzles are trash. This is also in the OG. I was playing the OG and I was like, the puzzles are complete trash. But when the remake,
depending on the difficulty of the game, the puzzles get more and more obscure that you need a fucking lexicon to understand what some of them mean.
Yeah.
Well, I hear you. It's a little. They're riddles you more or less have to understand, and I know they kind of have that with the noose puzzle section in the prison.
Yeah, what I saw your video and you were like, what the hell is this? You're like, and it's true. I played the OG, and the OG, that section wasn't that like it didn't have that many words, and it felt like the remake just like gave you, like for example, like even like the apartment section, the box or whatever, like with the medallions that you put in, that section for the remake, I don't know, again, maybe it's because I played on hard, but correct me if I'm wrong, Byrus, that one I had to do like 6 riddles, and I was like, what the frick is this? I was like, what? Like same thing with the news puzzle, like didn't you have to do it like 6 times or whatever? You had to like put everything together, and it was just like more, it just felt longer.
Yeah, the news puzzle you can kind of figure out a little bit quicker. To be honest, I took a little bit more time on the apartment one because I assumed you had to get multiple medallions to fit there, but you're telling the story of how it works. So if you do like the man, the woman, and then the snake, or then the sword, and then the gravestone, whatever, like I missed that at first, and I was like, okay, I have to be missing another medallion. So I ran on for another like 45 minutes looking for it. Then I realized, I went back, I'm like, hold on, let me just try and see if I can solve this as is. And then I ended up solving it first, and I was like, oh shit, it was that the whole time. That just, I guess, was me not really experiencing those puzzles myself. So if you had played the game before, you probably would have known that.
Yeah. Like the OG is the same.
Yeah, it's a little odd, I guess. Like that would kind of discourage some people, and I understand that. But I'm always an advocate for having more difficult puzzles in the game to have me work my brain a little bit, because I feel smarter. So when I got it, instead of feeling smarter, I was like, oh wow, I'm an idiot because I didn't realize that it was just the 3 medallions, and it was just telling the story with those 3 and then moving them and flipping them and whatever. I thought I had to get, typical gamer knowledge. You see 6 empty slots, you're thinking, okay, let me get 6 to enter them. And again, that was just like a brain fart.
Yeah, in the OG, speaking of that section, on hard difficulty, the puzzle got ridiculous. And if you guys were there for the stream, you guys know that I was like, what the hell is this? Like, I figured out the puzzle, and I was like, this fits the puzzle. Like, this fits the riddle. And it wasn't the answer. And the actual answer made 0 sense. I was like, bro, what is this? Now, that's for the OG. The remake, after you solve the first, puzzle, it would switch and give you another riddle to do.
New prompt, yeah.
And then it gave you another prompt, and then another prompt, and then it almost did it like 5 times, if I'm not mistaken, or maybe 4, whatever. But Was it 3? Okay, so maybe that's just a difficulty change.
Yeah, because I'm pretty sure it's them under the tree, then him approaching, and then her death, I believe.
And then
it
there was
ends
like, okay, for hard, there was like another one where it's like you have to pick your own, like who's the
is
guilty
there?
one.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, and then I think there's another one too. So yeah, so I think that's just a difficulty thing. But I was like, bro, what is this? Why am I doing it 5 times? Like, dude, I'm getting. I don't even remember if the OG was like that too. I don't think so. It didn't feel like a drag. Also, like every puzzle on hard just felt like a drag. And I was like, there's only 2 puzzles, I think, that I was kind of like, okay, this makes sense. I like this. You're kind of figuring it out. Like, for example, I like the director's room. Like, there's 2 puzzles there. There's the safe, and there's also the hand, where you have to move like the bracelets on the hand. I really like the bracelets because you have to like figure out like, oh, the coloring here is the same coloring as the first bracelet and the other one. Like that made sense. I was like, okay, that's a good puzzle. And then also in the safe, you had to look at the bookcase, kind of put everything in order, and then go to the safe, and then kind of figure out what numbers is which. Right? That was good. I like that. But then there's other puzzles like the noose one where I was like, why do I have to, like, there were so many things I had to put, and it wasn't just that. There was also another puzzle that I'm forgetting, but it just felt like every puzzle was just a drag to do. And I'm not talking about like keypads and like lock codes. That was fine, but it's just like the riddles, like the puzzles. I was like, bro, what is this? I will say, I think out of like all the survival horror games that I've played, I will say I think the Silent Hill 2 is probably the weakest when it comes to puzzles making sense, in my opinion. As mentioned, I think there's only 2 ones where I was like, I kind of like this. This is a good puzzle. Like the ones in the director's room, and there was also another one, but everything else I was like, I don't know about this. This is kind of a drag. Like when I played it the second time, no, even like as I got to the end, like when I got to the noose, I was like, I'm not doing this, bro. I'm looking it up. I'm looking it up. I don't have the patience for this, man. Like this is.
Well, it's funny because I'm pretty sure in the original 2, the answer was always the arsonist, so you would just pick whatever one was there. But I think they changed it in this one.
But I'm not the biggest fan of puzzles. Like even when it comes to Resident Evil, I should mention, even with Resident Evil puzzles are not hard. They're pretty chill. I mean, there's some Resident Evil puzzles that are like what the frick am I looking at? Like like OG RE3 with the water puzzle, or what else? Like I'm thinking like RE3 had a lot of weird puzzles. The one with like the the jewels or whatever. The other thing that I also wanted to talk about too, I guess we're almost done with this section, and then by the way, then we'll read some chats. This was kind of a nitpick for me, but there was a lot of times where the game, it just felt like they just changed stuff just for the sake of changing them. For example, I thought it was cool that you would go to the same locations as the OG, and you would kind of have like that weird vibe where you'd be like, whoa, you know what I mean? Like the game would kind of just like zoom in and out or whatever. I like that because it kind of just pays an homage to the OG. But there was a lot of times where I was like, okay, the room here and in the remake is the room, like it's just a couple doors down in the OG, and I'm like, did they really have to change it? Like I know it's a reimagining, and obviously changing it does help, kind of like a fresh new playthrough, right? Because you're playing a game and things are different. But one thing that I kind of liked about the Resident Evil remakes or Resident Evil reimaginings is that sometimes they wouldn't change stuff that wasn't really needed. Like even if you're looking at like OG or like the first Resident Evil remake, you know what I mean? So I don't know if did you feel that as well?
Yeah, I can't say I had a complaint about that really.
Yeah.
To me, it felt fine. It was paced out well, and especially with the amount of rooms, you were able to, I guess, go from one end to the other, and it didn't feel like monotonous or too close or too far and whatnot. So I personally didn't really have a complaint. I know they changed some things around, like the Pyramid Head boss fight. They moved from that tiny ass room in the stairwell.
Yeah, and that makes sense.
Bit of an arena.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah.
The Abstract Daddy fight, I liked how they changed
It's
that
bigger.
a lot, where you're running through the halls and it turns more and more like the flesh wall.
Yeah.
Like stuff like that, like I liked, and I think they incorporated it really well.
Yeah.
And they have like the little hints of things that weren't there before that changed that were really nice. I personally didn't have a problem with it. I didn't notice much of an issue on my playthrough. That's just me. I thought it flowed pretty well.
Yeah, and it was still great. Like again, this is just a nitpick for me, but it was just felt like something that was so minute where I was like, did we really have to just change it from this room to the next room? Like, can we just keep the same room? Like, obviously, some boss fights they kept in the same exact room. Like, for example, like the 2 Pyramid Head boss fight. But as you mentioned, there's other times where they changed the location. And it was a good thing because like the Abstract Daddy was one of the stupidest fights in the OG because you didn't have room. You couldn't dodge. Like it was just like a square room, and you just had to like go bounce from each corner to corner to kind of get away from him. And you kind of had to learn that strat through trial and error. So that was kind of you know, it was a good thing. Obviously, too, with the Pyramid Head fight, they kind of gave you like more of an arena to kind of go around in circles, and they kind of gave like stuff that kind of blocked him off that he would later destroy, which is nice. But it was just minor stuff for me. We'll move on to the last nitpick that I had was no entrance to the Mexican restaurant and no entrance to the Chinese restaurant. Bro, what the freak was that? Yo, I was so disappointed because I played the OG Silent Hill 2 and I was like, yo, oh, Silent Hill has a Mexican restaurant. Bro, can I get a freaking burrito or freaking taco up in this place? A Silent Hill taco sounds goated. I ain't gonna lie. Like, that sounds pretty good. I kind of wanted to look at the menu, at least. A lot of my viewers and me were kind of speculating. We're like, oh yeah, well, you know, Project Wesker, I don't know if you heard, but the new one, you're going to be able to go to a lot of buildings. Like, everything's basically opened up, was true. But the only places you like really couldn't go was the Chinese restaurant and the taco. Obviously, I'm kind of just trolling here, but kind of not, because I even mentioned this while I was playing. I was like, bro, like, come on, man. Couldn't I get some like freaking like Mexican tacos? Like, órale, way. Like, come on. But anyways, I'm just kind of trolling there. It's a nitpick. It kind of got under my skin.
Guys, listen, if you're still here and enjoying the stream, make sure to hit that like button. If you aren't yet subscribed, which I'm pretty sure most of you in here are, make sure to subscribe or follow on his Twitch. You could also come and follow me on YouTube. Here you go. I don't know how much of this is going to show on my webcam, but hopefully it does. Go follow the kid. Look, we were talking about Silent Hill. I got a Silent Hill 2 video right here. Really good, really funny, at least in my opinion. Got some new bangers coming out as well. But, you know, you don't have to, but you definitely can. That'd be pretty cool. Again, you don't got to do that.
So, yeah, I don't know if you want to start, Byrus, with things that you liked.
Everything. No, it's so good. The game overall is fantastic. I love like the little details as the game goes on. James gets more and more decrepit, depressed, and malnourished. You see the bags under his eyes. His beard starts to grow out. Angela, if you notice, because she's very anxiety-ridden, if you're going to photo mode, which I know doesn't exist in the game yet, but with PC mods it does. You can see her fingernails are completely bitten off. The little nods like in Heaven's Night, where he's clearly a recovering alcoholic. Offers him the drink. He's like, he doesn't have to say, sorry, I don't drink anymore. It's just like subtle details. I'm good. He sits there, his hands are shaking, like wanting to take a sip.
I didn't even notice that.
Details are so good. Yeah, they're so good. So
there's so many. Yeah, there's so many good ones.
Characters are great. Some of the face models, like I know for Angela, she looks a little off at points, like especially at the beginning of the game. I think she looks weird, but as the game goes on, you kind of get used to her. We don't make fun of Angela on this side, by the way.
Wait, what?
So if you make fun of her, I will bully you.
No, actually, I don't know why people were saying had such an issue with Angela. That was weird for me because I was like, she looks her age.
I think what it is, she does look her age, and obviously with the essay that she's gone through, she's gonna age a little bit more than what typically is because the amount of stress and anxiety and shit that she's gone through. It's gonna happen. If you've ever seen someone recover from something traumatic, they typically don't look their like that much like
their best,
which is why she looks a little bit older, and it makes complete sense. Like, so I don't have complaints about that. I think it's just weird that people always want them to look more sexualized, like prettier and sexier, and I think that's really effing weird in my opinion,
especially
I know that was a big thing on Twitter. People were talking about it. They're like, if you think that the SA victim needs to look sexier, then you are missing the entire point of the character, and two, you are just flat out a weirdo. And I 100% agree with that statement. Like, it's like you don't see these people talk about Eddie. He's a big fat slob who's an ugly guy, but you know, he looks fine. But the SA victim, sorry, I just get heated about stuff like this because I think people need to shut up with their bad opinions sometimes.
It is a weird opinion. I will say that. I mean, you kind of poison the well. You said if anybody thinks that, then they're weirdos. But I think maybe it's just a lot of just like people just don't know. Like the OG, I think a lot of people just don't know that Angela looked like in the OG she looked older. But in the remake, she looked her age. Like I could tell what her age was. I think what did I say, 19? And then I guessed it right.
Yeah.
Or whatever. She looks young. Like she doesn't look old. And obviously everybody I thought did a fantastic job with the character models, especially with Angela and James, they look very sad, very depressed, almost like, I guess in Spanish there's a word, and I'm assuming in Portuguese it's similar, but almost pobrecito. I don't know if you...
Yeah, pobrecito. Yeah.
Yeah, pobrecito. Everybody looks very
Or,
sad,
usually
very
people
like
think, yeah,
pathetic,
sad
like
thing.
very like but not pathetic in a bad way, but almost like just very sad, you know what I mean? I don't know what the direct translation of that would be, but I guess just that, right? Just
Yeah,
everybody look very
would
like,
be like
oh,
a-
like that.
Yeah, like a little sad thing is.
Yeah.
I know what you mean. Just like almost
Yeah.
looking frail, I guess would be
Yeah.
another word for it.
Well, in the OG, you couldn't really have that with the graphics in 2001. So everybody
Yeah,
just
well-
looked like James and Angela looked the same. Like they looked like they were
do,
the
they
same.
look like
Yeah.
the same base model.
Yeah, you know what I mean? So I think just people didn't play the OG, and then when they came to the remake, they kind of just, you know what I mean? They just assume like, oh, this chick has to be hotter. You know what I mean? So I think maybe that's why. Because if you really know the games, it doesn't make sense why you would want them to be hotter, because that would just be weird. You know what I mean?
I agree.
So, but I thought the game did a fantastic, and that's one of the things that I really liked was, and I kind of mentioned it in the non-spoiler section before, but I really liked how James just had that pobrecito kind of look. You know what I mean? Like the actor did
Like
a
that
fantastic
puppy
job.
dog, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah. So
yeah.
as mentioned before, it's not like pathetic in a sad way. It's more like just like a very like a puppy dog. Thank you.
So, yeah, he's just lost and looking for.
Yeah.
Because that's kind
Yeah.
of his whole thing is he's just lost looking for his dead wife that has
Yeah.
that's literally in the backseat of his car.
Yeah.
Also, to something that I wanted to piggyback off of from before that you mentioned.
Yep.
With the nods to the original game. So it's actually been, I don't know if you've seen this, people have dissected it and actually realized that it is kind
The
of his own
photographs.
personal purgatory. Yeah, the
Yeah.
photographs are the memories of them leading up to their life with James and Mary, because it talks about his new career, her then getting sick, and then kind of his spiral. But the throwback stuff that kind of give you those nostalgia, like for example, the one where he's on the roof and you see the broken fence.
Yeah. Oh yeah, in the
where he
hospital.
gets thrown through, from
Yeah.
Pyramid Head in the original.
Yeah.
Those are canon, technically. From what I read, that there was a dissection that someone did off of, I can't remember if it was the photographs or it was something, but it reads out, "You've been here for 20 years" or something like that. And all
That was the
player models
photographs.
that you see dead.
That was
Yeah,
the
yeah.
photograph. So if you collect all of those mementos, like photographs, if you put them all, then that's when the 20 years things kind of.
You
So
read it
kind of
like that, yeah.
yeah,
Which
that,
is
that's
pretty cool that they made it that way. That he's still suffering every single time, no matter what ending you get. He just keeps reliving the same version of hell, or I guess his
Yeah.
personal hell.
And another point too, that I think someone also brought in my comment section, but I don't remember where specifically. And sorry that I don't remember the specific person, but this is something that I also noticed just by me playing the second time. There's a specific spot where I think it's right next to, like in the town in Silent Hill, like right next to, like there's like an RV or whatever. There's like a little
Yeah.
RV kind of car where there's like a
Yeah,
save point later on. Or I think there's also a save point in the beginning, but right next to it, there's a body that's kind of lied, like he's on the ground. And if you pick up the paper, it says, that's what the commenter was saying, that light actually, some enemies or a lot of the enemies, they don't like light. So that's how they're able to see you. So turn off your light if you're trying to be sneaky, essentially. But that body that was right there with the light, because you don't know who that is, it almost seemed like that was James. So that was James dying and kind of like respawning. You know what I mean? Like he basically wrote that note, like, hey, or the note from before, I guess. I'm just putting two and two together, but I guess there was also another note to get into like the general store, and it would be like, I tried 4,000 combinations, try from 4 whatever to this. Those are the only ones I need to try. I guess you could also interpret that as that being James. That kind of just seems. Yeah, it does kind of go to the whole purgatory thing, right? It almost seems to me like Silent Hill, and this is something I wanted to discuss too, but it's kind of on the spoiler section, but we are in the spoiler section, so let's talk about it. But it almost seems like Silent Hill, especially when it comes to second and also the short message, it's almost like Silent Hill is almost a good guy. Silent Hill is almost like a personification, like it's almost like a person in the sense that it's trying to let the person know that, hey, you're kind of a jerk. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
the whole purpose of Silent Hill and Silent Hill 2 and the short message, and by the way, those are the only ones that I've beaten, so that's why I'm talking about them, is to let the person know that, hey, you're not a nice person. Realize that, or else you get a dumb ending. You know what I mean? You get a bad ending and it kind of restarts, right? I think the OG ending that I got was him and Laura leaving. I think that's called the leaving ending. Correct me if I'm wrong.
The leave ending, yeah.
Yeah. And that almost seems like James has completed his time in Silent Hill. That's what I kind of ascertained from that. It's like the only good ending in my opinion, because that ending, he basically just leaves with the girl and they can go to either heaven or hell, whatever. Like that, you're kind of just extrapolating from there, right? I don't know. But he's done the purgatory. He's finished, he accomplished his mission, and he learned. But
He
you could
accepted
also
it and is learning to move on with his life, yeah.
But in the remake, I got the Maria ending, or the one where, no, what was it? Did I get the water ending? I
In
don't
the
remember.
water, that's the one I got the first time. And personally,
That's what
think-
you got. Yeah.
I
yeah.
personally think that makes the most sense for the story, because there's no way this man would go through all this trauma and trouble to then go unhappy with this life. I feel like he would kill himself.
My interpretation of that is that he's already dead in Silent Hill, and the water
Yeah.
ending is him. That's how he got there. That's how he died. Because, and the reason I say that is because in the short message, which I thought was very interesting, by the way, I really like the short message, the girl is still alive. So she goes through Silent Hill, and then she figures out at the end that basically, hey, I'm a jerk. I should not be like that. Why was I a jerk? I should stop that. Like, this is like, it's a self-reflection moment where she's like, wow, I bullied somebody to deleting themselves. So at the end, she accomplishes her mission, and she accomplishes the goal of Silent Hill, is basically figuring out like, hey, you're a trash person. And then she gets to come back to the real world, because the ending is her still being alive. In none of the endings for James does that happen, where you see him coming back to the real world, because even in the leave ending, he's still in the foggy Silent Hill.
In the cemetery, yeah.
And also, we never know how he got there, because we only see him kind of looking really like shocked and washing his face or whatever, or looking at the mirror, you know what I mean, in the bathroom. So for me, I took it, and again, this is what I kind of like about Silent Hill, is that there's also, it's kind of up to you to kind of put together, even though for most stories,
yeah.
for most stories, I hate that, but with Silent Hill, for some reason, it makes sense. But for me, I took that him going through the water ending, taking the car and diving into the water was how he got into Silent Hill. So it's kind of like you failed. That's a fail ending. You have to reset, and it resets back to him going there, because that's how he got, because we never see him alive. But that's just my interpretation. What do you think of that, Byrus?
I can definitely see that. I just think that that's the most, it's not a fulfilling ending. It's not a good ending, obviously, but to me,
Yeah.
it like makes sense in my canon.
Yeah.
Because after everything this man went through, both physically, emotionally, with his wife, I don't feel like this man would have a happy ending. I just don't think it's in his character to have a good one. Even the Maria ending's not that happy. He just lives his life now in Silent Hill with Maria. But then again, if it's like the purgatory aspect of it, which they've kind of alluded to with the photographs, he just keeps reliving this trauma over and over and over again, trying to make things change. It's basically the definition of insanity, right?
Yeah, exactly. And him kind of respawning.
He never will.
And doing it again. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And that would explain the 20 years.
Because he can't take what he did back. She's dead. Even if he accepts it, he's still stuck there, because he's still not a great person. Even though, yes, he killed her and she kind of wanted to be dead, but also didn't want to be dead. So he felt like he was doing her a favor, but it was justified in his head. No matter what, I feel like he's just understands that he constantly needs to be punished. And for him to off himself at the end with the realization that, I am not a good person, to me, makes the most sense in my headcanon. And I 100% believe that's the best ending besides the dog one.
Yeah, so your interpretation of it, or your understanding, is that James is unredeemable. He cannot be redeemed. So
like he's not.
So
he
would go to hell.
Human being, but he's not a great person either.
Yeah.
Like he has some redeeming factors about him, obviously, as you see as the story progresses. But one right thing doesn't make all the other things wrong you did okay, right?
Yeah,
that's just I guess how I see it. As much as it's kind of like, for example, obviously two different ends of the spectrum, but like Joel in The Last of Us Part 1, the man, he is so far removed from humanity, it's insane. He is not a good person. He will do anything to survive and protect people that he, loves, which I understand in this world makes sense. You kind of need to do that.
Yeah.
But just because yes, of course, he's a good guy. He's teaching Ellie to swim. He's there for all these big moments, and you can see he's a big, loving, caring dad, because he had his, spoilers for The Last of Us, his daughter taken away. You haven't played it. The game's been out for fucking 12 years, so get on it.
Yeah.
Like, but he's like he's not a good person no matter what, but you sympathize and you understand him because you start to learn this character. That's kind of how I feel about James. He's not a good person, but I sympathize with him because I've seen his trauma. I understand what he's going through. I know his story, right? So it's again, not a good person. He's not really redeemable, but you can sympathize with his actions and why he did what he did and why he feels this way, and also understand why he is here, because at the same time he fully deserves to to be living this nightmare. Right? Yeah. So it's
it's interesting.
You can kind of take it as you will, but that's just how I see it, right?
No, I agree, because even as he's going through the world, there's one scene where he's like, I'm not like you. When he's like talking to Angela, when Angela's with like the knife on the floor, he's like, I'm not like you. And it's like, no, you are. you're just as trash of a person as we don't know everyone's backstory. I mean, maybe there's secrets that I haven't found, and correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you know, but I don't know why Laura is in there. Obviously Laura's a little punk, so obviously she must have done something to be in Silent Hill, you know what I mean? So but it wasn't at the same degree as James or the others, because she's not seeing stuff. You know what I mean?
What I think, again, I could be wrong because I'm pretty sure this information's out there, but this is how I see it. Yeah. Laura was one of the patients with Mary, and she doesn't age because they ask how old she is. She's like, I'm 9. Her birthday was 3 years ago from the aspect of things, because that's how long he thinks she's been dead, but she hasn't, right? So I think she's just there to also kind of find out what happened to Mary. Now, I don't remember if Laura is technically dead. Also,
yeah,
I can obviously easily look this up, but we'll leave it.
No, I think so, because
and let the chat get involved. But
because here's
I'm
the
pretty
thing.
sure she was also a patient there with Mary in the hospital.
No, she was. Yeah, I think she states that Mary visits her in the hospital. But kind of going back to your point on her not aging, that's kind of a given for me, and this is kind of just something that I kind of knew beforehand, is that people that are in purgatory, like if you're dead, you don't age, right? Again, this is going into like paranormal stuff, but this would kind of be the same kind of, like, obviously if James has been stuck there for 20 years and he's been doing this loop, right, of this purgatory loop because he hasn't learned his lesson, unless you get the good ending, right, or leave ending where he kind of leaves that and then he goes off to another. That's my interpretation. But if he's been there for that long, he's not an old man. You know what I mean? He's still, what is he, like 28 or 29? I don't know.
Yeah, he's like in his late 20s at least. I'm pretty sure.
So he's still the same age. So everybody's the same age. But, and also what I understand too is that time doesn't work the same as it does in the real world, because even if you go to short message, I don't think that chick, I don't remember her name, but that chick was gone for like weeks on end or whatever, being stuck there. It's like almost like these purgatories, you're stuck there for a long time, but in the real world, I don't know how many minutes pass, you know what I mean? It's not the same.
Well,
so
a great example of that is in the PT, where the clock is constantly stuck at 11:59, but you're there for who knows how long, right? Because this playable teaser. Yeah. But that also has significance to the story that they tell in that short story with PT. Yeah. So it makes sense, but it's kind of like that as well. Yeah, time doesn't move kind of the same, because if you are in this version of purgatory, I mean, you're in there during the day. By the time you leave, it's night. You're in this for like days already by this point.
Yeah. Right? And that's something that I want to talk about too, is I loved how the atmosphere, we kind of touched upon this before, but I really want to get into it. Like sometimes, obviously, when you get into Silent Hill, it's like gloomy, right? It's like kind of, it's almost like everything's foggy, but it's still daytime. But when you get into the hospital, it kind of looks from the outside, like it looks like it's almost sunset or like golden hour, right? I don't know if, it must be like going to turning into night. And it looked so nice. Like the atmosphere looked really almost cozy in the hospital when you first get in there. I don't know, for me it was. Maybe for people are like, how do you find that cozy? I don't know, for me it was. But then when you go down, you turn the generator, you come back up the hospital, if you go back to the first floor, everything is pitch black. Or even as you're going up, you notice that everything turns pitch black. And that kind of dichotomy of it turning from kind of cozy golden hour kind of mood and then from pitch black, or also when same kind of thing can be found in the apartments. When James goes into Otherworld, it becomes pitch black, like hellish, like complete dark. And as you're going through Silent Hill, sometimes you're going in it when it's during the Otherworld, right? Like when James leaves the hospital, that kind of feeling of going from really nice golden hour to like normal Silent Hill, kind of foggy kind of weather, to it being pitch dark. it does mess with your moods, right? I don't know. For me,
yeah, it's a sense of uneasiness with it.
Yeah. I was like, bro, like this looks like this looks crap. Can we go back to Golden Hour? Because this looks like trash. You know what I mean? Like this, like you wouldn't want to be going in Silent Hill when it's like pitch black otherworld, right? You'd want it, yeah. Like so, it like you said, it causes that uneasiness, but I really loved that part of the game. I guess the other thing is reworks. The reworks of locations, like the apartments. The apartments in the OG was probably the worst part of the game. When I played that, I was like, bro, is the whole game like this? Because every door is locked. That's not just the apartments, the whole of Silent Hill. Every door was completely locked.
That. Yeah, that's the big issue people have with it too, right?
Yeah, and then the OG, and then the remake did a fantastic job of just making it feel like an actual place that people live. While the OG felt like it just felt just weird. It didn't look like an actual location to me, like an actual
I will say
apartment.
though, one thing I did like, there are still a lot of locked doors in this game, which I find it funny if you open up 50 locked or try to open 50 locked doors to get an achievement. But I will say that I like how they utilize the locked doors, especially in the apartments. Specifically, I think the third floor does it really well, where they merge rooms together, where you'll either go in through a crevice or a crack in the wall. You go in through there and find another locked door, which you open to then. So they all kind of have a use in this game. Obviously, you still have some doors, like specifically in the hotel, where some doors are just locked and you can't do anything with them. The apartments have that too, but I think it's utilized a lot better in this game than it is in the original. And I think it leads to make it feel, like you said, more like alive, like people have lived here. And I think that helps add with the uneasiness. Like, people used to live here, and now that it's a complete ghost town, really adds to that psychological thing of, okay, what happened here initially and what is kind of going on now that is making, I guess, this imagination come to life, sort of deal. And I think they do it really well. Bloober team, honestly, they fucking killed it, man.
Yeah. The level design was great, in my opinion. Way better than the OG. I couldn't stand the OG, how everything was locked, and I was like, bro, why am I clicking this door? Like, just tell me that it's locked, because I'm wasting time looking at the text. I'm like, dude, this is like the 150th door by the apartment. I was like, bro, this is dumb. I was like, what the frick is happening here? Well, in the remake, like you said, you could go to, like, you would go into separate locations, or as mentioned before too, like they opened up the city a lot more. Obviously, they didn't open the Chinese restaurant or the Mexican restaurant, which I'm still salty about. but no, everything, like, just going into like the the bar looked better. Correct me if I'm wrong, but did they add the Rosewater Park, like that, like not the park, but not like the pier, but like the other park where there's a section before you go to the theater, the movie theater, where James and Maria are kind of talking or whatever, and they kind of pass through like a little garden.
Right.
I forgot the name of it. Yeah, the statue. Was that in, I don't think that was that in the OG? I don't think so.
Yeah, because that's where you first meet Maria, is in the gazebo.
No, but
you go to your special place, one of the special places you guys had together, and it was in the park. I'm pretty sure. I mean, correct me if I'm wrong.
Yeah, I don't know.
I'm sure that was there.
Like I said, I only beat it once, and it was just a week before, so maybe I'm just not remembering correctly. But they also did an unnecessary change also. And this was something that I was kind of talking about before, where I couldn't think of an example of something that they changed that was like, did they really have to change this? Was the location of where you kind of had that scene with the fat guy. What's his name? Eddie. They changed it for the movie theater, while in the OG was in Pete's Bolorama. Like, did they really have to change that? Like, really? Like, and also, correct me if I'm wrong, but also in the OG, Heavenly Nights, like the strip club, wasn't it below Pete's Bolorama? While in the remake, they kind of just changed it so that it kind of fits the layout. So they moved it more to the right.
They changed the location of that, but funny enough, if you go back to one of the throwback areas, the original Heaven's Night is still there with the sign that's like kind of broken.
Oh, okay.
Pete's Bolorama, if you end up going there separately, there's a few instances that are funny. One, you find the pizza line.
Yeah.
It says, like, you sit there and eat pizza. And if you go there with Maria, in the original, she said, I'll wait outside. I don't like bowling. But in this one, she's like, why would I wait outside? And he's like, oh, I don't know, just a thought.
Oh, I didn't do it. I was going to do that.
So it's cool. Yeah. They still have those moments in there, which I personally appreciate. I know people in the original games will be like, that's cool. Like, even though it's changed, and I get to make the experience feel maybe a little bit fresher, a little newer, is fair.
But it felt unnecessary.
Like, they still left those nods there. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
so
but it's cool that they
kept them empty, that they got rid of it, but they still have those. Yeah,
it's
good. They did a good job with it.
Because now Maria says in the movie theater, like, I hate movies or something like that, right? It's like a similar line.
Yeah. Maybe you better wait here.
Okay. Not much of a movie fan anyway.
You might be right about the movie line. I don't really recall, but
But for me, that was just like going back to the nitpick section. That was just something that I was like, what did they really have to change it? Like Pete's Bolorama seems pretty classic, you know what I mean? Like it's a pretty nostalgic location.
Speaking of nitpick, the prison. Oh my goodness, it is egregious.
Wait, you didn't like the prison? I love the prison.
I did not like the prison at all. Like, it's cool the first time you're there, but dude, after an hour being there, I'm like, honestly, the tight spaces, the amount of fucking crawling you hear in my ears because they're all over the goddamn place, the way it's structured, after a while, it just started to piss me off. And I'm like, repeat playthroughs, I will absolutely hate coming back here. The labyrinth, a little bit too, because the problem is,
I never liked the labyrinth.
And the labyrinth also pisses me off. But I understand that it's dark for the reason to add the dread. But, like, please let me see something. These hallways are so goddamn narrow. I already can't see jack shit as it is. Let me see something, please. And then they have...
That's like the OG.
Which I thought was kind of cool, but it was still, like... Anyway, that's my 2 cents on the latter half of the game. The labyrinth is also just kind of, a mess.
Yeah, it's supposed to be like crazy.
Maria's cutscene. That's really it.
Oh yeah, when she's like, "Come over here, James," or unlock. Yeah. That was weird when she started being all sexual and stuff. I was like, "All right, calm down, Maria." Sheesh.
Well, that's kind of her character because that's how James kind of So
yeah, but I'm just mentioning like my first ever encounter. I was like, "Bro, what is this?"
I hear what you're saying though.
It's like, hey, chill, Maria, chill.
Hey, yo, in this place of all places. What the
well, I mean, she was like that from the very first time that you meet her, right? Like she's like, I'm warm or whatever. But but that one she was like really forward. I was like, calm down, Maria. I thought I just saw you die, and now you're alive, and you want okay.
And you're already bricked up.
Kind of going back to what you were saying with the prison, that's something that I actually liked. The prison in the OG was very dark, very claustrophobic. Well, it's. I will say one thing. I've never been scared playing Silent Hill games. I don't really get scared. Oh, we lost Byrus. As I was saying, I really like the prison because the OG was just like it was very just it was almost it felt very boring. Like it just felt like 2 hallways, another like the big area where you do the you didn't do the news puzzle in the big area in the OG. You did like a different puzzle where it almost looked like it was almost Aztec or Mayan stuff, like structures or whatever.
Yeah.
You could hear like something moving around in like the location, which I guess they took out in the remake. I don't remember encountering that same kind of thing that almost seemed like something was underground moving, like a worm or something. And in the remake, I really loved the level design, how you could go up and there was something else and there was another door. It's just the whole area. I love the level design of it, where it just made sense
cool.
of going back.
I won't knock the way it looked because to me, I was here. I was like, wow, this looks fucking awesome. Excuse me, I keep swearing. I'm trying to get better at that on your streams. But,
no, it's okay. Like, you don't have to worry about that. You can swear. It's okay.
Okay, just because I know it's more editing for you after when you cut them down. So
no.
I try not to.
I don't think YouTube. Yeah, it's okay. You're good. You're good.
But yeah, I will say I thought it looked like really cool. Like don't get me wrong, I love anything that looks nasty, grotesque. Like half of my arm, like my whole arm is about like decrepit garbage. Like I love the visualization of how it looks in this prison, and it just makes it look run down and depressing, and it looked great. But physically playing it for more than an hour and a half, after a while, I'm like, all right, I'm kind of done with this area, especially because you go from
it's completely dark too in the remake,
like space to another cornered space to another cornered space.
Yeah.
Like the whole game is just about being in tiny spaces, and that's fine. I understand that's the aspect of it, but after a while, especially in a prison where it's a little more open formed, except maybe some hallways. Yeah, I think I would have maybe liked to seen that a bit more because I'm like, okay, the gameplay loop for this gets a little monotonous when you keep doing it, and to me it was just like, can we maybe try something a little different that isn't just like back in the day? Makes sense. You can only utilize so much of the software, but because like, let's get a little crazy with it. But
the OG was all claustrophobic. It was all just like tight spaces, very closed off. So for me, I don't think it really bothered me that much. But I mean, that's fair, right? I mean, it was very closed off, very like, I mean, it's a prison, right? So prison, especially in the 18th century kind of prison, right?
That,
So
well, to be
yeah.
fair, yeah, you're not wrong there. But I think
Yeah.
I personally think it would have benefited for being just a little different. I would have liked to have seen. I know it was like what, maybe 2 levels in a basement. I would have liked to have seen maybe a few more levels. Like no, this part wasn't in the overworld as of yet, right?
What? No,
When
no,
you're
it
in the
was.
prison?
If no,
Oh,
that
it was,
was
yeah.
other,
So I would have liked if
Otherworld,
they just went batshit crazy, made like fucking like 6 floors that just went up, and it just looked
That would have been
like
cool. Yeah.
insane. Like that would have been really cool because
Yeah.
you kind of get those aspects, especially in the hospital when you see the rain come down with Marie in the
Yeah.
other world, and it just
Or the
pitch
labyrinth.
black. I would have liked,
Yeah.
and the labyrinth. I would have
Yeah.
liked to have seen maybe more of that in the prison. I know it kind of does that, but I would have just liked to have seen cells and cells and cells just go right to the roof, and maybe you hear more of the creaking, people being distressed. I thought that would have been, I think, a better utilization of the prison instead of kind of doing the same formulaic stuff they had done basically the whole game.
Well, that's
Labyrinth,
why I liked it.
kind of understand because it's like the hallways before you get to Angela, and it's supposed to look like a home, like a hallways in a home.
Yeah.
But like that, I was okay with. The prison, I thought would have been cool if they maybe did something more like that. That's just me personally. I'm probably the only person who feels like that, but that's what I would have liked to see more. Right? Just something that maybe visually changed how it was perceived instead of just the typical small corner, little hallway. I would have liked to just. I think, I'm just gonna end up repeating myself. So yes, I will end there.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's funny that you brought that aspect up, and I think that would have been it would have been way better for me if it was almost like an exaggeration of what the prison was
Right, yeah.
originally, because that's what Otherworld is. Otherworld is almost like a hellish, twisted version of the actual place, because when you're in Silent Hill, the same buildings, the same general location of everything is the same. But once you go into like the hellish location of Otherworld, that's when things start turning very like the areas that you thought from before get changed up. Like for example, in the hospital, they kept like the OG like courtyard, which was just like a square metal box. But they also let you go into the actual courtyard earlier, right? So that's how the hospital used to be. So it's almost like, Stranger Things and Upside Down, where everything is kind of just a twisted version of the actual thing. So I think that's why Otherworld is like that. But that's a very good idea. I think it would have been even better if it was like that. But going back to what I was saying, that's why I liked it, because in the OG we didn't have levels, right? It was just like hallways of the area. It was very minimalistic, very tight spaces, very just it wasn't a big prison. But in this one, adding the top levels and like the other kind of floating area where there was like it almost felt like there was another prison on top, that location was super cool, and I liked how everything interconnected. But that's interesting that the reason you didn't like it is why I liked it. that's cool. That's a cool dichotomy. But the other thing too is, as mentioned before, I don't get scared when I'm playing. In this game, I really respected the fact that they didn't do cheap jump scares. Now, you could also argue that, if you saw a mannequin in the corner, you get really jump scared or whatever. But it wasn't like a jump scare you've played a lot of indie horror games, Byrus, and you know how there's a lot of them where it's just like wow, and they put the volume, they just freaking jack it to 100%, and it's like, bro, that's like a cheap, you're trying to get a reaction.
Someone.
Yeah, but it's like super cheap. You know what I mean? And in Silent Hill, I can only think of like a couple of areas where it's like that. You know what I mean? Like for example, in the prison, as we were just talking about, where if you touch the bathroom door once and then you leave, you're somebody like, open up, FBI,
banging on the door,
that kind of a thing. So that was the only, I think, and there was also another section too where I think there was like an actual jump scare, but obviously it didn't affect me. I don't get jump scared or scared, but I really respected how Bloober team, they didn't really do that. Like as we discussed before, it was more of the psychological. They really respected that of the OG, where it was more of like you kind of thinking and in your head like, oh, there's something here, I got to get ready, like I gotta stay alert, when in reality there's nothing there. That's what I think was really fantastic about this game, and I really respect Bloober team for not using cheap jump scares like that.
Like that's kind of how I feel about movies too. Like a great example of this I always like to bring to people's attention. I don't know if you ever watched the movie It Follows, but it's a great thriller horror movie that doesn't rely on jump scares. I think there's maybe one jump scare in there, and it doesn't really have like a notable cue. The thing just happens. If you watch the movie, you know what I'm talking about. Tall guy with no eyes, creepy as shit. But a movie like The Conjuring, where it's left, right, left, right, like all these different horror movies, especially like these PG-13 rated ones, are kind of like that. And some horror games do that because most people don't really know how to build tension. If you can build tension and just give me the sense of hopelessness, or as most people say, disempowerment, it is a phenomenal way to build tension. Because I can get like, the jump scares don't scare me. What pisses me off is a loud noise that I'm not expecting.
Yeah.
And it's a cheap reaction. You want to get a genuine reaction out of me. A great one that did it was first time playing Resident Evil Village. I remember playing that at 2 a.m. Was not expecting the House Beneviento stuff. I know you have very strong opinions about Village. And
no,
7.
but it's a good first experience.
But that's a good way to do it. Yeah, like if you're not like, the whole game goes just basically action shooter. Right?
Yep.
And then you get this one aspect that just immediately grounds you. No weapons, no nothing, and you're pitch black in the dark with the baby monster you can't see. That is a great way to do horror. Again, Silent Hill is another great thing. The Woodside apartment, it's completely dark and eerie and atmospheric. You get into room 209, you hear the whispering in your ear, it scratches that certain aspect of your brain. You're like, oh man, like that, like you get chills. Like that is a great way, in my opinion, to
build tension.
To build tension. Like I don't need the jump scares, I don't need the loud noises. There's very few instances where I think it's earned. The Conjuring 2, I think, with the lawnmower scene is a great way to utilize a jump scare, because you're waiting for it. It's building that tension, and then it hits you with it, right? Maybe when you're starting to come down, like, okay, this isn't as bad, which I think a lot of games can utilize from, but a lot of the times it's not. It's just bad, cheap jump scare. Outlast is absolutely terrible for that shit.
I've heard of that.
I like Outlast. I think it's a really well made game and it's really intuitive, but the amount of jump scares is so unnecessary. It doesn't make sense. Another great kind of a jump scare, but not really, is Silent Hill 3, or is it 3 or 4? I think it might be 4. When you go through the hole the second time and try to find, I forget what her name is. Not Elaine, whatever. And you see a mannequin sitting there with, I think it's holding a key. That's like another great one, because it's like, oof, you're not expecting that. Stuff like that I think is really well done. But yeah, jump scares are cheap. Very rarely are they earned, and I agree with you. I'm glad that they didn't go that route for this game, which I know the original didn't really do except for a few instances. So I'm glad they at least kept that there to get that tension.
I can't even think of any instances in the OG, but I thought this one was just masterful. Like the Bloober team really did a fantastic. There's no other game that I've played it where it's that level, where, like I said, the game messes with you and you're like kind of like, where I'm ready, I'm ready, you know what I mean? Like my arms are up, I'm ready, Right, but they did fantastic. And Nostalgia says, hey, what did y'all think of the music in Silent Hill 2 remake? That's a good question, Nostalgic.
Absolutely great.
I'll let you go first, Byrus.
So good. I mean, it's the same original composer. He came back and he banged it out, and it's even better than
I didn't even know
the original. I think the only thing that I wish was maybe they left a little bit the same was the Heaven's Night, because they kind of diluted it a little bit.
Yeah, that was. You don't get those, I didn't like that.
Yeah, you don't really get the melodic, punchy drums like you used to in the original. They made it seem more ethereal, which is cool. Like, I get it. Again, it's the vibes for it. But I personally like the original version of the Heaven's Night theme a little bit more.
Yeah.
But other than that, I think the soundtrack was great. It's all good. Like, they rarely touched anything from the original, and I think that was a smart play. You don't really want to mess with that stuff, and they did a great job of it, honestly.
Yeah, so for me, I actually prefer the OG. And the reason is because I had no idea it was the same composer, but that's interesting. Yeah, I actually prefer the OG. Like, especially, I don't even remember the music, because like I said, I only experienced that scene once, but it's the scene where James and Maria start like talking like for the first time in the pier. In the OG, I like that one a lot better. And one of the songs that I really did not like was the one Heavenly Nights, right? The strip club, or is it Heaven Nights or Heavenly? Correct if I'm wrong, guys.
Heaven's Night, yeah.
Heaven's Night, okay, yeah. That strip club, all I heard was bass, was just like I just kept hearing the bass when Maria and James. It was very bass heavy. I don't know. I was not a big fan of that. That was probably the worst song for me. And also, I didn't really like the like the electric guitar with like the whammy bar. I thought that was kind of like, okay, it's a little annoying. You know what I mean? Obviously, they kept the same kind of piano. Like like that's classic. You know what I mean? Like, that's nostalgic. So I think for me, I like the OG. I like the OG a lot better. Yeah, for the soundtrack, just because of those reasons, right? I didn't like
No,
that.
I don't blame you. Yeah, I don't blame you. It's a great original soundtrack. Like honestly, if they just ported that from the original into this game, I don't think anybody would have complained.
Yeah, honestly, they should have just done like the the Resident Evil 2 remake or RE4 remake. You know, like where they kept the same music.
I thought they would have had. I
Yeah.
thought they would have had that as a feature in the game. I was really surprised that they didn't. But mind you, I guess the music's basically somewhat the same. It's just a few different instruments to make it sound a little bit more modern.
Yeah.
But yeah, I agree. I feel like they would have benefited from having that choice as well.
Kind of continuing on with things that I liked. I think we're almost done. Yeah, we're almost done. Is Luke Roberts. So the voice actor for James, I thought did a fantastic job. We kind of mentioned it before, but one thing I had no idea was that he's actually British. He's British, but he's actually British Canadian. So I think that's why he does such a fantastic American accent. Because, obviously if you're like, dual citizenship, you can kind of do both accents. Because it's very rare for an actor from the UK to do a good American accent. Like there's very few actors that can pull it off. And even the same vice versa for American actors to pull off a good, a British accent. But no, I thought Luke Roberts did a fantastic job. Honestly, I that's crazy for me. I had no idea he had a British accent. That was crazy. Did you know? I was gonna ask you. Did you know he was Canadian?
No, that's
how
I feel about a lot of people who play American like characters, like Tom Holland, Tom Hardy. Like a lot of these people are British and they American accents. The first time you hear him speak, you're like, oh, what is like Andrew Lincoln is another one from The Walking Dead. Like I'm like, this man sounds like this. And he sounds like a grizzled like army vet. What is going on?
Yeah,
I don't understand why they love to give these roles to the British people. It's so funny.
Yeah, it's honestly crazy. But I guess, like I said, it's probably because he's half Canadian. But dude, that was fantastic. Personally, I like to do a review score, but I kind of want to hear. Do you like to do review scores, Byrus? Or do you just want to say if it's awesome or
I normally don't. If I do it as like a joke in my videos. Like I don't really take reviews.
Oh yeah, 10 out of 10
because I think it's different.
Too much water.
Like yeah, everything's either 10 out of 10 or I go 3 out of 10. Just like as a joke, but I know it helps people to kind of give an idea.
Yeah.
I personally would give Silent Hill 2 an 8 out of 10, maybe 8.5 out of 10 because of all the extra content, especially that they added 2 new endings, which is absolutely insane.
Yeah.
But again, to me, scores personally don't mean all that much.
Yeah,
because
it's very subjective.
So my rating could be different from yours.
Yeah.
Which is why I think discussions are important, like we did today, because we get to, like, for example, the prison thing. We agreed to disagreed on our thoughts on it.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, that was weird because we liked it and hated it for different reasons.
Different
right?
reasons. Yeah,
no, for
exactly.
for the same reason. That's it, actually. Yeah. Because you thought you wanted the prison to be more, and I like that it had more, right? Already compared to the original.
So you're right.
So that's a funny circumstance, but yeah, I guess for me, what I would rate it is honestly the biggest nitpick that I have is that the replayability aspect isn't there. So it's not like Resident Evil, like the Resident Evil remakes, or even like the OG Resident Evils, where they have fantastic end game rewards, where it kind of just makes you want to play the game and beat it on the hardest difficulty, so you get like the OP weapon. That's awesome, right? And obviously, as we discussed, that is something that the OG had, which I had no idea. So that's just an OG problem that they just brought into the new one. So obviously it's not going to affect my score that much, but I would have liked it if it was more like RE4, where, you beat the game. The game also rewarded you for that because, I've kind of discussed this in previous videos. There's some kind of trend that's going on where they're not giving trophies for beating the game on hard. Like, for example, all of the games that I've beaten, like in the last 2 years, I've beaten them on the hardest difficulty, and the game doesn't reward me for any of that. They don't even give me a trophy. You know what I mean? And it's like a trophy isn't that much. Like, for example, God of War Ragnarok. What was that, 3 years ago? That game did not give me a trophy or anything special for beating it on the hardest difficulty on my first playthrough.
Kind of pissed me off too.
Yeah,
the same thing.
Jedi Survivor, I believe. What else? Obviously this game did not give me any reward for that. And just having, the chainsaw just thrown at you, I think they could have changed that. Even though that was an OG problem, they could have added more to that. So for that reason, I think just because it doesn't have that, I can't rate it higher than Resident Evil, right? Especially Resident Evil 4. I can't. So I would have to give it a 9. personally. So I rated RE4 Remake as a 10. I thought it was a fantastic game. Obviously nothing is perfect. So even though I gave it a 10 out of 10, does not mean that it's, you know, shy of any problems, but I think I'll give it a 9. Honestly, I thought I had a fantastic time. It made me become more of a Silent Hill fan. I love the story, as we've discussed, and everything, but that was just my biggest nitpick. I can't stand how games are just not rewarding you for beating games on the hardest difficulty, right? Like, give me something. Make sure to click these videos if you guys want to see more of my reviews. Huge shout out to Byrus for stopping by to chat, and thank you so much for watching.